The NHS is broken, and I'm tired. What else is new? While on the surface, the fact that the UK has a National Health Service is a very good thing, it can only really continue to be a good thing if that service continues to work. Unfortunately, with the way the Tories have spent the last decade completely gutting it to try to sell it off entirely, the system now basically boils down to a questionnaire that just reads, "Yeah, but did you dive?" And if the answer is no, they don't care. Hell, sometimes even if the answer is yes, they don't care. When I say they, I don't mean individual healthcare workers, by the way. They're trying their best in a system that does not support them, and I fully support any and all healthcare strikes until they're treated with dignity. When I say they, I mean the system and the private and political interests designed to screw us poor folk for the sake of profits and Tory power. And I want to talk about my direct contact with this system. I should probably start by giving you a rundown of my basic issues. Up until about 18 months ago, I was a relatively healthy, vaguely female person in my early 20s. Let's ignore all the mental health stuff and the undiagnosed ADHD for now, we're talking physical health. But put a pin in that. Around March of 2022, I started to get tired. And not sleepy tired. This exhaustion didn't go away whether I slept for 3 hours or 13. The only way I can truly think to describe it is bone weary. I wake up tired, and not in the normal adult way that happens to us all. I get more exhausted as the day goes on and often hit some kind of wall, especially if I'm at work, by some point after midday. This has come with a not insignificant amount of brain fog, which is incredibly frustrating, as somebody who is not only already living with an ADHD brain that puts something down and then immediately forgets where, but also as somebody who prides herself on her brain. The speed of my thoughts hasn't slowed down at all, but my ability to process them sure has. The brain fog comes and goes, but the fatigue is everlasting, and in the last 6 months, it's been getting worse. At first, I attributed that to burnout. My previous job had been overworking me for more than a year, and I really was actually burned out. I had to take a month of stress leave and I started therapy again, and when that month was over and I was back at work, I had better tools to deal with the stress, but nothing shifted the fatigue. And then, a few months ago, the muscle fatigue started. I couldn't hold a broom for 5 minutes without every muscle in my hand aching. You can't see it, but when I film these videos, I often have to take breaks from holding the mic. Occasionally, I'll just swap hands every now and then. You'll notice in some of my old videos that there are parts where I'm just holding the mic in a different hand across myself. Real weird. Hello. My legs hurt after I walk up 2 flights of stairs. If I sit in one position too long, everything starts hurting. I have had to move so many times today. The only comparison I can think of is like, if you do a massive workout in the morning, it's what your muscles feel like for the rest of the day and the day after. They're quick to fatigue and they hurt more than they should doing simple tasks. Now, it's easy to pretend chronic fatigue isn't happening, that I'm just overreacting, to gaslight myself into assuming everything's fine, I'm just a baby bitch. But chronic pain? Harder to ignore. I'm not the most fit person in the world, but I've always been, at the very least, functional. I wasn't embarrassingly unfit. I could hold my own in a beep test. That's
Scram pacer test is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test.
For my American friends out there. I can get up a flight of stairs without needing to take a break, or, well, I could. Now I need to sit down immediately afterwards, or at the very least stop moving until my legs stop aching. When I'm editing my YouTube videos, my hand starts cramping up from using the mouse within about half an hour. And I'm using an ergonomic mouse, and often strapping my wrist or putting a compression bandage on it to help out. But even then, doesn't take long to wear out. Okay, like this section right now, I'm writing this at work. This is my new job, by the way. I've been on shift for 2 hours of a 4-hour shift, and I had to sit down for 5 minutes because everything aches and I'm too hot and the brain fog is making my eyes feel weird. This job is better for me than the previous one, not a high bar. It's better to do 4 hours 5 days a week than it is to do 8 hours a day, anywhere between 2 and 5 days a week, especially when that 8 hours is on my feet and dealing with customers. This is definitely better. But it doesn't mean my chronic illness magically works around it. I'll still get hit like a ton of bricks an hour into my shift, and that never feels justifiable to suddenly need to lie down for 10 minutes, so I'll just take a longer bathroom break so I can sit down and rest. Luckily, I'm quite good at this job, so I can still get everything done, and I'm good at pacing myself, trying not to burn out too quickly, but it's still a massive issue, and it's frustrating to feel like I can't even stand on my feet and work for 4 hours without needing a break. It makes me feel weak and pathetic and annoyed that I can't do anything about it. On top of this, I'm overheating constantly, and I've never enjoyed summer, but now I get sweaty at 22 degrees Celsius, and more alarmingly, I've been getting intermittent pins and needles in my hands and occasionally feet for seemingly no reason, which is scary because that's a major symptom of MS, which one of my family members has. Over the last 6 months, I've been trying to figure out what I have, and I have my own theories, but obviously I need a doctor to actually tell me. My ADHD and my anxiety make it incredibly difficult for me to book appointments, particularly over the phone, which is the only way my GP takes them. So even just working myself up to that took over 2 months. And you can say that anxiety is no excuse to not just book an appointment, but look at it this way. Imagine you're swimming in an ocean, and suddenly a shark rears out of the water at you, mouth open, bearing down. Imagine the panic you would feel, the flood of adrenaline, the total rationality out the window as every fiber of your body screams for you to get away from it, to get to safety. Now, imagine feeling that exact sense of fear at making a phone call or attending an appointment. It is silly, it is irrational, and I know this, but my brain floods my body with the same amount of adrenaline whether I am in shark-infested waters or meeting a new person for the first time. No amount of "this is ridiculous" is going to make my body turn off fight or flight in that scenario. All I can do is avoid the thing or power through it. I had to take my car in to get its MOT the other week, and I genuinely had an anxiety attack just driving my car to get the MOT. The mechanic was very nice in the end. It was fine. But the genuine panic I felt on the way to that was awful. And you feel irrational afterwards because nothing bad happened. It was fine. But something bad might have happened. And that's all that matters in my brain. But then, on top of that, registering at your local GP is hard. And I put off doing that until January of this year after I had to take a month of stress leave off work at my previous job. I was previously registered in the city I went to uni in. And I'd been back home for 2 years. And I still hadn't re-registered myself at my original GP. There are obstacles and stopgaps to neurodivergent people that are built into the system that do not affect neurotypical people the same way. Getting yourself set up at a GP, supposedly, is easy, or it should be. Everybody should get themselves set up at a GP. When I lived in Australia, we had a family GP, and growing up there was an expectation that you'd go once a year for a health checkup, just to make sure everything's still running okay. But that's not the attitude over here, or at least it isn't anymore. Largely because the system can't sustain it. It won't run if every single person is going in for a yearly checkup for seemingly no reason. Not that I would anyway, what with the whole anxiety thing. It's a running joke in my family that I could get shot and I drive myself to hospital because I don't want to bother people who drive ambulances. It's not a healthy mindset. It's half of why it took me so long to realize something was actually wrong with me, but I'm working on it. Executive dysfunction is very misunderstood, but I also have the freeze response to anxiety, and I get depression fog that stops me from functioning, and even one of those can stop a person from getting things done. But all three? I have won the world's most aggravating lottery. Systems do not work well with my brain. If I have to fill out paperwork and go somewhere to submit it, or ring somebody up, or visit somewhere I've never been before, I struggle to make myself do any of it. It's the same thing that happened when I tried to legally change my last name a year ago. The system for that in this country is so fucked and so time-consuming and so stressful that I spent months trying to do it and working around the energy to get that all sorted, and then eventually just gave up. And you might be saying, Talis, isn't the deed poll the easiest way to do it? Why don't you just do it that way? No, if I'm going to go through the stress of a process to change my name, I want to do it properly. I want to do it the most extensive way that it is able to do it. And that system is very stressful. If I just change it via deed poll the easy way, it's not going to be changed everywhere. It's going to be stuff I'm going to have to do myself manually. And then if I want to do it again the proper way, I'll have to do it again the stressful way. And just either way, I'm using a system, but the one I wanted to use is the much harder and more stressful system. And now I go by that name. Hi, I'm Talis Adler, but I haven't legally changed it because even just looking at the deed poll webpage gives me a panic attack. The stress that I feel thinking about the process of changing my name, it feels insurmountable. I want to do it. I know I want to do it. I want the name I use to write under to be the name I go by everywhere. But the idea of getting a witness and going to a lawyer was so stressful that I just couldn't do it. And navigating the NHS feels exactly the same. There are so many pointless hoops to jump through. You can only discuss one issue per appointment. Your appointment can only run for 10 minutes. You cannot double book appointments to account for this. If you want an ADHD referral, that's a 1,000-year waitlist. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with you in a 10-minute appointment, so they'll send you off to make your own blood test appointment, which for somebody like me with not only ADHD but also a phobia of needles isn't ideal. It took me 3 weeks to actually book the blood test after my appointment. Then I had to book another GP appointment to discuss my results. Then I sat down for 6 minutes of a 10-minute slot, while this man looked at me in my face and told me it was my period's fault. Yes, I have low iron, but I also have a vitamin D deficiency and my thyroid is too low. But let's ignore that It's your woman problems! And I didn't even get to minute 10 of a 10-minute slot. It was just, here's a prescription for iron and vitamin D, get another blood test in 8 weeks, and also it's your period that's the problem. And that was it. I didn't even get a printout of my blood work. I had to go back the next day and ask for that myself because my GP doesn't send things online. That would be hard for a neurotypical person to deal with, but I had a panic attack leaving that appointment. I felt ignored and lost and like I was never going to actually be treated for whatever is causing my issues, and it felt completely hopeless. I've got another blood test coming up in a week or so we can rule some other stuff out and see if my levels have changed since taking my prescriptions, and I'm pretty sure that what I have is fibromyalgia, which means I will continue to be used like a pincushion until we rule everything else out, because there isn't one specific test for fibro. You just have to make sure it's not everything else first. I'm okay. I'm managing, in large part due to the fact that I don't think what I have is life-threatening, but there are people out there who are going unseen, who are going to die because the NHS isn't working how it was set up to work. Everything's an industrial conveyor belt, and if you can't get your issue sorted before you get moved to the next one, you're screwed. My grandma, who I live with, nearly died in the summer of 2020 because she had a permanent headache that was getting worse, and A&E sent her home twice with ibuprofen before I drove her back the third time and made them give her a blood test, which led to them giving her a scan, which showed that she had a bleed on the brain. She had to get emergency brain surgery. It was that bad. If I hadn't been living with her, I do not know what would have happened to her. Even when I did take her to A&E, they didn't take it seriously enough. Even when she was clearly deteriorating, they rolled their eyes at me like I was exaggerating until the scans came back. My grandma almost died, and I was being treated like a hysterical little girl for being worried about her. And I get it. They must have hundreds of people come through there who are exaggerating, who are hypochondriacs, who are hysterical about the fact that my grandma has a headache, so she must be really ill. She was barely cognizant. She was barely functional. I would ask her questions and she wouldn't respond until minutes later. She wasn't aware of the things that were going on around her, and they still tried to brush her off. Like I said, I don't think it's any individual's fault. They're all stuck working in this system that gives them absolutely no breathing room and seems to be actively designed to suck all of the empathy and compassion out of the people that work in it. But dealing with that situation nearly broke me. And I can take care of my loved one's health. I can march into A&E at the height of COVID and demand they do a blood test because I'm certain something's wrong, and I can get sneered at for that. But I can't do the same thing for myself. I can't advocate for myself in the same way. It's just not how my brain is wired. I didn't argue with that doctor when he told me it must be my woman problems that caused my issues. I just nodded and asked why he thought that and tried not to have a panic attack until I got back to my car. And it sucks, because something is wrong with me. But the NHS isn't set up for people with brains like mine, so it takes me twice, 3 times, 4 times as long to get information as it does for neurotypical people. I should have had my first blood test in January, but I didn't get it until July. This system doesn't work for me, so I still don't actually know what's wrong with me, or at least don't have proof of what it is, which means I can't start treating it. I'm exhausted and getting more fatigued by the day, and I still have to make more appointments, get more blood tests, talk to more medical receptionists who look at me like I just tracked dog shit in on the carpet, or I have to pay out of pocket for a private appointment that I can't afford and will probably still not get me very far anyway. It's great! I love the state of this country. Good job, everyone! And I know that there are people out there, the same kinds of people who were commenting on my teenage girl in my 20s video, that'll say things like, oh, just suck it up. Your generation has no backbone, has no spine. Nah, 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 nah. All right. Why don't I pump you with the same level of adrenaline that my body is pumped with when I have to make a phone call, and see how well you fare doing it? Genuinely. Try it out. I have the same attitude towards this as those men who say that childbirth can't be that painful, or that period cramps mustn't be that painful. I think any man who says that should have a TENS machine strapped to him for 4 days. It's not that hard to just have empathy for fellow people. It's the same reason why, even though my experience with the hospital receptionists and people who I was dealing with when my grandmother was going in and out of A&E were overall incredibly negative. One hospital receptionist in particular made me feel like I was being irrational for bringing my grandma in. And then the next day when I brought her in again, they were like, she's dying. I don't hate that lady. I understand and empathize with why she was rolling her eyes at me. I I get why she was coming at it from that direction. I empathize with the fact that she must see lots of people throughout the day who are exaggerating, who are coming in for pointless reasons. And I get how being in the system for long enough can make you react differently to things, then make you seem less compassionate, maybe makes you actually less compassionate. I don't hate any of those people. Hospital receptionist seems to be a very particular breed of rude, but I try not to let that get to me for the most part, because every single person is a person. Everyone's going through something. Try and be compassionate to people. Try and give people the benefit of the doubt. As somebody who spent the last 10 years of my life working in customer service, people have gotten worse. People have gotten ruder. People have gotten more willing to be openly and directly rude to your face as a member of staff. It's really hard dealing with it, and that's why I had to get out of customer service. That's why I had to change jobs, aside from that my job was just terrible. Because working in customer service that long it was making me less empathetic. It was making me more willing to snap at people. And I didn't like that about myself. So I had to pivot. Originally, the plan for this video, way back when I started planning in January, was going to be about me going through the system to get myself mental health help. It was about how the system is broken mental health wise, which it absolutely is. You have to basically take control of your own mental health plan. You have to do questionnaires, book in a phone call assessment, go to your GP, all things that people with mental illnesses aren't going to fucking do. It's deranged that's the system that they have in place. And, I really try very, very hard not to praise Australia too much, because it is also not the best country in the world. But their Medicare system is what the NHS used to be. My family GP, I was in and out of therapy growing up because of my home life. And my family GP, every time we went in and we were like, that therapist wasn't really working for us, can we get referred to a new one? I would do a question. I'd sit in the office. I would do a questionnaire with him, and we wouldn't leave until the questionnaire was done. And then I'd get a 6-week referral to a specific kind of therapist that specialized in a particular kind of therapy. And they'd basically be like, see if this works. If it starts to work, you can get another referral for another month of stuff. If it doesn't, you can come back, do another questionnaire, and we'll find someone in a different field that might be able to help you. I did this for 10 years. Not constantly, obviously, but I mean, within the system, it didn't change very much. It never got worse at dealing with that. And maybe it is now. Obviously, I haven't lived there for a number of years. 8 years? That's a while. 7 years. 8 years, something. But it's an infinitely better system to the one we've got over here. I don't know, man. I'm just tired. Partly because of the chronic fatigue, and partly just because of life. I mean, obviously, if I could just do this as a career, it would be easier, because I wouldn't be physically exerting myself and going out and doing a job every day, like a physical job on my feet every day. I'm kind of hoping and banking on the fact that this YouTube channel will pick up enough steam that I can at the very least be earning a part-time job wage, so that I can make more videos. Because this job is tiring. It involves a lot of research and a lot of editing. And there are times that I'm up editing until 6 a.m, which, don't get me wrong, I love doing, but it is exhausting. But it's the kind of exhausting that works within what my symptoms are, the framework of how my body is, right? I can sit in my bed and edit. I can't sit in my bed and go to my job. And it feels less pathetic when I'm tired at home writing than it does when I've been at work for an hour and I have to sit down in a toilet cubicle because I'm too tired to keep standing. I've been sitting in this position for too long. I've swapped legs. I've crossed and uncrossed my legs. I've put one leg over the edge of the bed, and my hips and my back are still in agony. So I'm going to close out this video here. I might have a part 2 to this video if I eventually do get anywhere with the system, and if I do ever get an actual diagnosis. I don't know. I just feel like there are a lot of people I know out there who have chronic illnesses, who have long-term disabilities, who have been screwed by the system. I know people who are mentally ill who feel that they don't have an in with the system at all. And I just think that, we as people should be banding together to commiserate with each other over those things. Because I don't think enough of us know that there are other people out there going through the same things. Because it can feel so isolating when you're doing it on your own, when you're going to the GP on your own, when you're making those calls on your own, when you have to be consciously doing things for yourself. It's incredibly isolating, and the system makes it feel more isolating. So I think in a lot of ways, I'm hoping that this video will be able to make people who've been through a similar thing feel seen and feel like they're not alone, even when they are alone, because it sucks. It sucks. But I hope you're all keeping safe out there. I hope you're all well, or as well as you can be. I'm off to go and book yet another blood test that I really don't want to have. Annyeong!